Whether it's on a bus or a train, in school or at the store, or maybe just walking down a busy street, we are bound to run into someone who is just downright unusual. But perhaps one day you'll meet someone who surpasses unusual and turns out to be unbelievably mysterious. Airports play host to a variety of people. Most everyone is either arriving from or departing to a different place. But one traveler who arrived at an airport couldn't even find his homeland on a map. The man flew from Europe to Japan and landed at the Haneda Airport in Tokyo. At customs, when asked to present his passport, officials noted the man was from a country called Taured. This baffled airport officials, as this was a country they never heard of before. They questioned the man, and he told them how Taured was situated between the borders of France and Spain and had been established for over 1,000 years. When asked to point to his home on a map, the man was agitated to find a country named Andorra was in the place of Taured. To make matters even stranger, the airport officials attempted to contact the company the man was there to meet, but attempts failed, and it was discovered that the company he said he worked for didn't exist, and the people they did end up getting in touch with had no idea who this man even was anyway. Aside from having currency from several different countries and being fluent in French and Japanese, the man from Taured was an utter mystery. Until the matter could be figured out, they put the man up in a hotel with security outside his door and confiscated his passport and ID. The next morning, however, the man was no longer in his hotel room, and all his belongings had vanished from the airport security. The story of the man from Taured seems like a story ripped from the pages of a science fiction novel. It is not uncommon for someone to find the courage to pirate an airplane and hold its passengers hostage, but it is quite rare for that person to get away with it and completely disappear altogether. Wearing a nice suit and tie, a man who called himself Dan Cooper bought a ticket to fly to Seattle on a Boeing 727. While on board the plane, he handed a note to a flight attendant and requested she read it immediately. The note stated that he had a bomb but wouldn't use it if everyone followed his instructions. After landing in Seattle, Cooper let the passengers off the plane, requested the plane be refueled, and demanded $200,000 and 4 parachutes be brought to him. Soon after, the plane was back in the air, and Cooper, 2 pilots, the flight engineer, and 1 flight attendant took off toward Reno, Nevada. This time, Cooper had the engineer and attendant enter the cockpit and close the door. Not too long after leaving the Seattle airport, they saw warnings go off that the aft air stair had been activated and there was a change of air pressure. The plane landed in Reno and was immediately boarded by armed police searching for any sign of him. But D.B. Cooper had already jumped from the plane, presumably landing somewhere in southwest Washington. The search for D.B. Cooper by the FBI lasted over 45 years, but eventually they called it quits. The only evidence ever recovered was a tie and some bundles of the cash he had received for the ransom. History has given us incredible and influential poets and authors throughout time, such as the renowned Edgar Allan Poe. His work has affected many, but none so much as the Poe Toaster. Edgar Allan Poe died in 1849 at the age of 40 in Baltimore, Maryland. Starting in the 1930s, an unknown person would visit the cenotaph marking the original burial site of Edgar Allan Poe, always donned in black, wearing a scarf or hood to hide their face, and holding a silver-tipped cane. His visits were always consistent. He would arrive early in the morning on January 19th, Poe's birthday, every year. He would pour one glass of cognac, raise a toast to Poe, and leave the rest of the bottle along with 3 roses at the site. Occasionally, the mysterious figure left notes along with the other gifts. One note stated, "Edgar, I haven't forgotten you," and another said, "The torch will be passed," with references to a son. It is presumed that the Poe Toaster left this dutiful tradition to his offspring, who held up the ritual into the 2000s. Many people have attempted to get a glimpse of the elusive toaster, but so far, both father and son have remained an enigma. 2009 was the last known sighting of the Poe Toaster. Of course, no one is sure why they decided to stop, but some speculate that the bicentennial of Poe's birth was a logical place to end the long-held ceremony. The state of the world and the people in it have advanced over the last 1,000 years. Even the most rural parts of the world have adopted Western technologies and fashions, but some tribes have no intentions of changing. There's a man that lives in the jungles of the Amazon on a large piece of land that has been sanctioned off just for him. It is believed that the remaining people of his tribe were massacred by ranchers sometime in the 70s or 80s, leaving him as the only survivor. He has continued to live the sheltered tribal life and refuses to contact anyone who approaches him. Those brave enough are met with a sharpened bit of wood he fashioned into an arrow. He crafted several huts around the land, all of them containing a 6-foot-deep hole used as a form of defense or to trap animals. Around one of his huts, researchers have found a lush and plentiful garden, dried nuts, and a torch he formed out of resin. In 2009, he was attacked by gunmen, possibly wanting to get rid of him so they could have his land. Brazilian authorities found the protection post on the land had been raided, and there were empty shotgun shells nearby. Though no one has been charged for the attack, they believe the tribesman is alive and well. None of his people are left, no one knows what language he speaks, and he refuses to let anyone get too close. It seems this mysterious man is determined to live out his days in the safety of the jungle. The race to make the first atom bomb was on, and the United States was determined to keep their progress a secret from Germany and Japan, so they never expected the Soviet Union to send in a spy of their own. After the fall of the Soviet Union in the 90s, the KGB archives about the once classified Manhattan Project were released to the public. In the files, there were several mentions about a man or a woman known as Perseus, a physicist recruited to help work on the atomic bomb. He is believed to have been a Soviet spy that was sent to infiltrate the US and gain access to their information. However, it wasn't just in the Manhattan Project files that Perseus has been mentioned. Russian intelligence officer Colonel Vladimir Chikov was the first person to publicly write about the mysterious scientist, claiming that he or she was not interested in being paid for their work, but instead acted out of purely ideological considerations. But even though Chikov has spoken about Perseus outside of unclassified archives, there are still no clues as to who Perseus could have been. Perseus was successful in sending along what information he or she could back home, and the Soviet Union, a supposed ally to the US, gradually caught up in the race to atomic status. To this day, the identity of Perseus remains a mystery. Before there were Bunsen burners, there were crucibles. Before there was chemistry, there was alchemy. And before there was Marie Curie, there was Falconelli. Falconelli is a famous alchemist who was born sometime in the 1800s and mysteriously disappeared around 1926. His identity has never been revealed, even though he brought 3 gentlemen under his wing and became their teacher. They all kept their lips sealed on who the real Falconelli was. His first and most notable student was a man named Eugene Concellier, who joined him at just 16 years old. Under Fulcanelli's guidance, Eugene used a projection powder to turn lead into gold, which one of Fulcanelli's other students had witnessed happen. Fulcanelli has written several books under the same pen name with pages that have been illustrated by his other student, Jean-Julien Hubert Chapenian. This leads some to speculate that Jean-Julien was Fulcanelli himself, but this was never proven and the known timeline doesn't match up. Eugene claimed that in 1953, 27 years after Fulcanelli's disappearance, he met up with the alchemist in a Spanish castle. At the time, Fulcanelli would have been over 100 years old, but Eugene said the man looked to be in his 50s instead. No longer Fulcanelli the alchemist, he was now Fulcanelli the divine androgyne. And what happened to him after that remains a mystery to this day. Two boys playing down by the shore on a beach in Sandy Cove, Nova Scotia, made a very unusual discovery. A man with his legs cut off above the knee lay nearly lifeless on the shores of Sandy Cove. No one could get him to speak, but he mumbled something that sounded like Jerome, so this was what they called him. The man looked to be in his late teens or early 20s, but with him not speaking a single word, they couldn't know this for sure. In fact, his silence opened up a whole world full of theories. Maybe he was a sailor that committed mutiny, or an heir to a fortune who was disposed of, or perhaps he was the man who was found across the bay that people in Chipman, New Brunswick called Gamby. This was the most plausible explanation, as Gamby was a man about the same age as Jerome, who was found with his legs stuck in an iced-over river, which eventually needed amputation. Gamby was supposed to be taken to his homeland, but was tossed overboard by the man accompanying him. Though the stories seemed to match up, nothing could truly be confirmed because Jerome refused to speak to anyone. Jerome had a nasty disposition and was therefore resentfully looked after by a Catholic community for the rest of his life. He died the same day as the Titanic sank, making his death go practically unnoticed. A shoemaker in Nuremberg, Germany, came across a teenage boy stumbling like a drunk, walking down the road. The peasant-looking boy handed the shoemaker a letter that led to far more questions than answers. The mysterious origins and characteristics of the boy known as Kaspar was a story that swept Germany. He was sensitive to light, colors, and sounds. He couldn't tell the difference between men and women except by their clothes, and didn't know the difference between inanimate objects and living things. He was sensitive to metals and magnets, stating they pulled at him when they were near him. This wasn't the extent to his abilities by any means, but they did come with their own set of side effects, such as the smell of coffee and beer making him vomit, just the smell of wine making him drunk, and thunderstorms causing him extreme pain. When Kaspar had fully developed his vocabulary, he told how he was kept in a small cage in a boarded-up room, never seeing the light of day, with only a straw mat to sleep on, and a diet of only black bread and water. Kaspar was never allowed to see his jailer's face, as he was drugged with opium when it was time for a bath and a change of clothes. His jailer wrote a letter stating that the boy was left on his doorstep, but he couldn't take him in due to his own 10 children, but gave him what life he could in the cage. The man claimed the boy to be 17 years old, and for that reason, he sent him to Nuremberg to meet the captain of the cavalry to be a rider, quote, like his father was. Before Kaspar could fully embrace life and become a rider in the cavalry, he was stabbed to death when he was presumably 21 years old. The story of Kaspar can be summed up by the words on his tombstone: "Here lies Kaspar riddle of his time. His birth was unknown, his death mysterious." Thank you for watching. Please see the description below for a link to my Patreon and to my merch store. Any help that you give will help to ensure that we will keep YouTube creepy, and Seriously Strange will still have a place on this platform. And of course, be sure to check out another one of my videos and subscribe to my channel now, because you won't want to miss what's next. And I'll see you next time.